In this video, we'll be building this 4-foot live edge bench out of a single piece of wood. So let's get started. Our customer brought this piece of wood to us, and I have no idea what species it is. Her and her husband moved here from South Africa, and she said that they had brought that with them from South Africa, so some type of South African wood. It's really pretty. When I got it from them, it had some type of finish on it, and I think it's much more attractive. When we get done, we clean that finish off and use some Rubio Monocoat on it. So the first thing we're going to do here, this is a live edge, and the middle of it is the fattest part. The two ends are a little thinner, so we're going to cut the two ends off, and right now we're going to cut them 1 inch long. So we're going to end up losing 2 inches with these legs, but we're going to run it through the joiner to flatten the back of it, and it's bowed in the middle instead of, which is not ideal to run it through the joiner that way. You've got to try and balance it on that bow and get it flat. What you would really like to do is have it the other direction, but in this case, with that live edge on the other side, obviously that's not feasible. So we're just going to try and balance it on that bow and get the back of it straight and flat. And this is not a necessary step. If you didn't have a joiner, you could still build this. You can build this bench with a table saw and a router. I have a joiner. I'd like to have a straight back on it, so we're doing that, but not necessary. You don't have to have that to make this project. So now that I have the back straight, we're going to go back to the miter saw, and we're going to get 2 good square cuts on each end of the legs. And get them cut the actual length. Like I said, we cut them 1 inch long to begin with, and now I'm going to get them cut down to the correct length. So we're going to cut that end, and then move over to the stop block and get the other end. Then I'll do the same thing with the top, and I don't measure for it. I just am making the bench as long as possible. I think it came out to just over 50 inches. After I took the legs off of it and squared it up. Now for the legs, I'm going to take the live edge off the front of the legs, and that's what I'm doing here. And I just made them as wide as I could, and got all the live edge off of them. Blade's not quite tall enough. Now I was getting ready to start cutting my tenons on these legs, and one of them was just, I thought this board was flat, and it was close, but one was just a little thicker on a corner than the other. So I decided to run them through the planer. That way my tenons were all the same size, if my stock is all the same size. So I put the dado stack in the table saw here, and once again, you wouldn't have to have a dado stack to do this. You could do it with a single blade. It would just take quite a bit longer. Instead of 2 passes with the dado stack, you would have multiple passes with a single blade. I'm taking 3/4 of an inch off with that dado stack. With the single blade, obviously you're doing about 1/8 of an inch. So totally possible without the dado stack, just take a lot longer. And the thickness of your dado, or of your tenon that you're making here, isn't terribly important, and you'll see why here in a minute. We're gonna trace that tenon onto the bottom of the bench top here after we get the leg set up where we want it. And then I've built a jig for my my router to cut that mortise, and you'll see that here in a minute. So once we get that tenon traced on the bottom of there, we're just gonna follow those lines with the router. So you know, that tenon can be any size. And I only trace it on this one side because the jig has a fence, and I set that fence up to make this cut, and then I move over to the other side and make the same cut on the other end. The only thing I needed to do on there was draw my my stop lines, you know, where I wanted to stop the mortise on each end, on each side. So you can see these two black nuts on this jig I've got attached to the bottom of my router, and those are attached to a fence underneath there. So obviously you can loosen those two black knobs and move that fence wherever you want to. So I just line up the router bit with my line that I drew a minute ago around that tenon, and then tighten the fence down on the bottom side there, and just use that fence across the side and make my mortise. And I've set a stop up here on the side, so I know how deep I want to go. You know, my tenons are an inch, and I think I went down to 1 1/8. I always like to have a little bit of space in the bottom of my mortise. Now here I've already set my fence up to do the second cut, and I had already made the first cut on the other side as well. So here I am doing the second cut on the other side. And that's it, man. It's that simple. I'm not going to square those corners on the mortise. I'm going to just knock the corners off on the tenon. That seems to me a lot easier thing to do. The only thing I'm doing here is cleaning up. There's a little bit of wood left between those two passes I did with my router, so I'm just knocking that off of here, and then I'll knock the corners off my tenons, and they'll fit right down in there nice and snug. So that's what I'm doing here, is just knocking those corners off those tenons. I'm just going to glue those in place. So you can see I've got that finish off of here now. I tried sanding it off, and it got really gummy on me. So I ended up doing some light passes in the planer to get rid of that finish. Now this is the next day. That glue is dried, and I'm just going to put a couple blocks on the back side of these legs. Just popping those nails in to hold it in place while that glue dries. And you're not going to see those blocks from the front of this bench at all. I've got them pushed back to the back there. And that's it, man. As far as building goes, this bench is done. We're just going to sand it. I'm going to put some Rubio Monocoat on it, and And this bench is ready to go home. It actually went home the next day. I called my customer and she was very excited. Like I said, I have no idea what kind of wood this is, but we get that Rubio on there, and it really makes it pop. So here I'm sanding I'm sanding it with an 80, and then I use a wet washcloth to pop the grain, and I'll come back and sand one more time with 120, and blow that off, and then apply the Rubio monocoat. So if you're not familiar with Rubio monocoat, it's a two-part finish. There's an oil portion, which is what I'm mixing up right there, and then there's an accelerator that you mix in with that. It's not a cheap finish, but a little bit of it does go a long ways. So I'm using those syringes to measure out the amount I'm putting in there. And I'm a cheapskate, so I'm really careful with the amount. I always end up needing to mix more because I try to mix the least amount I can. Look at that grain pop. It was a real soft wood. It reminded me a lot of cedar, the way working with it. It's very light and soft, but very pretty grain, beautiful grain. Like I said a minute ago, I'm a bit of a cheapskate, so I'm actually using an old pad applying this, and I have a fresh new pad that I will come back and clean this up and get the excess off. So once you apply your Rubio monocoat, you've got to come back and just wipe the excess off after you get done, and it's done. It's ready to go. I mean, it's just like any finish. It needs so many days to cure and to be completely hard. But once you've put it on and wiped the excess off, it's done. I keep finding little spots that look a little wet. Yeah, I missed video and putting the feet on, but we put our adjustable feet on there. And if you've watched any of our other videos, you've probably seen those. I'm trying to use the last little bit before I mix up some more. I actually think I got it done with that with a little bit that was left there. This is a penetrating finish, so it goes down into the wood. This is an easy project, and it's a great project to start honing your skills on making mortise and tenons. If you've been a little scared of those in the past, this is a good project to start working on your skills making mortise and tenons. I hope you like this build. I hope maybe you learned something, enjoyed watching. Please like and subscribe. Check out our channel. We've got a lot of other videos that we've posted. And thank you for watching.